Hey there, it's Stephanie Shea, Chief Astrologer for janspiller.com, and here's your June 2021 Astrological overview. It's hard to believe we're already looking into June, the 6th month of the year. Sure seems to be flying by, and we are in eclipse season. We had our first eclipse of the year on May the 26th. It was a lunar eclipse at 5 degrees Sagittarius. Coming up on June 10th is our first solar eclipse of the year. It's a solar eclipse new moon at 19 degrees of Gemini. And if you want to learn more about the eclipses of 2021, there is a video on this channel that's called Eclipses of 2021. Check it out. You can get a heads up on the rest of this year's eclipses, some of the important themes. In a nutshell, this June the 10th new moon solar eclipse in Gemini has a lot to do with what are some new beginnings we would like to cultivate that have to do with what we'd like to learn, with the way we acquire and process information, with the way we communicate with others. These are huge themes that can really make some changes in our lives. I'd say this new moon is also really good for anyone who may be wanting to get more involved in their community, in their neighborhood, who might want to be moving somewhere or taking some short trips. You can set some good goals for yourself, not just for the coming moon cycle. These solar eclipses are bigger picture. Think 6 months to a year ahead. But remember that Mercury is retrograde. If you watch these monthly overviews as well as your horoscope, you may remember Mercury went retrograde on May the 29th, and it is staying retrograde until June 21st, stationing direct on June 22nd. That's good news. However, we will be under the shadow phase of that cycle. It's kind of the tail end where Mercury's clearing all the ground that it retrograded through so you can get back on track forward. So even after the 22nd up until July 8th, it may still feel a bit murky when it comes to making decisions or having those clear communications. Proceed with caution. I don't tend to advise, treating a shadow phase exactly like the actual retrograde. I think you can take some cautious steps forward, but it's more of a yellow light than a green light. And know that after July 8th, you get that full green light. We're out of that shadow. And so whatever you dream up at this June 10th new moon eclipse, you can be visioning, okay, what would I slowly get started towards the end of June? What would I really put on the gas after July 8th? Set yourself up for a forward-moving July and August. So that's how you can work with these retrograde cycles between the beginning of the month and June 22nd. Just keep focusing on things you've already started. And if you're making a big decision, just do your research and realize after Mercury stations direct, you'll probably have more clarity about what it is you need to do and how you would like to accomplish it. So that's the two of the biggest headlines of the month, this eclipse, this Mercury retrograde, but there's a whole lot else going on. There's an exact square of Saturn and Uranus. This is astrology that's been going on all year. I would say the Saturn-Uranus square is some of the defining astrology of 2021. It's going to actually go into 2022, but the exact squares are happening mostly this year. We had one back in February. We're having one again on June the 14th. Now, when you consider the exact square, I wouldn't say something necessarily happens exactly on June the 14th, but it could, because energies are coming to a head. These planets have been in a tense aspect, a 90-degree angle called a square. Saturn in Aquarius, Uranus is in Taurus. They have very different stances. And I'd have to say they're pretty stubborn sometimes, you know. I think my Aquarius and Taurus friends could jokingly recognize some of the stubborn qualities that might go with Aquarius and Taurus. Of course, there's many other wonderful qualities, and it doesn't always have to be stubborn in a bad way. Sometimes it's sticking to your principles, which is very noble. However, when there's a square aspect, a compromise is needed. And so on this big picture global scale, we are seeing Saturn representing our systems, our structures, things that have been kind of embedded in our society. Uranus is more of the rebel, wanting something new, shaking things up, bringing unexpected events that shake things up sooner than later. So keep an eye out, since we're having eclipses and Mercury retrograde in this exact square. It could be more of a dramatic month than some of the other months of the year. It could be really good for activism if people are behaving responsibly. I never would advocate violence or anything like that, but to speak up for what you believe in. The astrology is almost forcing that. People aren't easily able to sit and let things coast under this astrology. It's putting pressure on. And you can learn a lot more about this square in the other video, but I wanted everyone to know when the exact square was, just so when you're interacting with others in the world, in your personal interactions, it could feel like a very tense time, especially because we just had that eclipse. And with Mercury retrograde, it's sort of ripe for misunderstandings, and people may tend to fly off the handle a little bit. So I would just be as cautious and giving space for yourself, maybe not interacting as much. We've got Mars in the sign of Leo starting June 11th. That's sort of a fiery, impulsive expression of Mars that could get people to be more egocentric than usual. It can also be a positive expression of Mars. Mars in Leo is highly creative, so we might see some really exciting artists' activism during this time period. That's certainly the type I'm hoping for. So you can see it's a very dynamic month. As a backdrop, most of the month we're going to have Venus in the sign of Cancer, which lends that watery, nurturing, emotionally connected energy. I think that's going to help cool down some of the more electric feeling astrology. You can tap into that just to get into your home base, your sense of security within yourself. And even on a literal sense, while Venus is in Cancer from June the 2nd all the way until June the 26th, if you're West Coast United States, or June 27th, East Coast, those dates when Venus goes into Leo. But most of the month, Venus in Cancer, you could really turn a part of your home into your oasis, focus on your inner sanctuary and your self-care. That's a great way to navigate some of these more tumultuous astrological energies. We have got Neptune stationing retrograde this month, as well as Jupiter. So we had a nice stretch of not that many outer planets in retrograde. They're all starting to start their retrograde cycles around now. We've got Jupiter retrograde June the 20th. It's going to retrograde at 2 degrees of Pisces. So we have actually been in this little sneak preview. That's what I like to call it. When Jupiter sneaks up into the sign, it's going to spend most of next year in. So when you think 2022, think Jupiter and Pisces. However, we're getting this window of time that started in about the middle of May and goes until the end of July. Let's see if that's right. It goes back into Aquarius July 28th. So the retrograde cycle is what's going to push Jupiter back into Aquarius at the end of July. But then by December 28th, Jupiter will be back in Pisces. So you can know from June 20th until July 28th. We still have Jupiter in Pisces, but it will be moving retrograde. This means it's more of a time to cultivate your own luck. That's how I like to think of it. Jupiter is the sign of luck, growth, expansion, opportunity. When it is direct, I feel that it's easier to attract what you want from the outside, and get some of the resources and people towards your life, into your projects, this type of thing. But now we're looking at Jupiter retrograde during a Mercury retrograde, the tail end of it, but still. I kind of think what you're going to spend the next few months while Jupiter is retrograde doing is coming up with things that you can jumpstart on your own. You may be able to attract the support and resources after you've shown the work you've put in and how dedicated you are to the idea. Pisces rules a lot of things. It's really good for music, creativity, but also I would say anything that involves spirituality, healing, the healing arts, all these types of things. If you're working along these lines, you can kind of expect to put in your own work to attract the luck that you're looking for in these areas. What's interesting about June 20th, not only is Jupiter retrograde, it's also the solstice and the day that the sun enters the sign of Cancer. So there's a lot going on in the northern hemisphere. That's the summer solstice. Down under, winter solstice. Either way, when we have that June solstice in Western astrology, that's always when the sun enters Cancer. We anchor certain signs to the equinoxes and solstices to make our zodiac wheel as Western astrologers. So that's what's going on. We're going to feel that shift from sun in Gemini to sun in Cancer. And remember, Venus is in Cancer too most of the month. So it will help to cool things down, to help us get in touch with our emotions. There's a bit of a slowing self-care energy to that. Now the other retrograde, just to have a heads up, is June 25th, Neptune retrograde. Jan Spiller was really big on getting people aware about the Neptune retrogrades. Sometimes that gets overlooked, but the days around the time Neptune is stationing either retrograde or direct can feel really foggy and out of sorts. And again, we're just barely out of Mercury retrograde. Feeling that Neptune stationing, getting ready from, our perspective to be retrograde, Jan would say that is definitely not a time for big decisions, and I certainly concur. So you can know, all right, Neptune retrograde, June 25th, maybe between the 23rd and the 27th, just taking it easy. We're coming out of Mercury retrograde anyway, and if you feel a bit foggy, you may just have to take more breaks to clear your head. Now, during the whole retrograde cycle of Neptune, you won't be feeling fuzzy the whole time, but it will last until December 1st, and it's known as the time that we are more connected to our subconscious, or what's behind the veil. It's really good time to write down dreams or insights, because once Neptune goes direct again, December 1st, it can be easy to forget that insight that had been in the back of your mind that suddenly came to the forefront. So definitely try to capture these things that come to you. We'll finish out the month, June 24th, full moon, 3 degrees Capricorn. So for Capricorn people who were born close to the beginning of Capricorn, around December 23rd, this could be a big full moon for you for self-realizations, but for everybody, it's a really good full moon to see what is practically working and not working. Capricorn rules business and finance. That may be in a special focus as far as what you need to see to accomplish a bigger picture professional goal. So I hope you can make the most of all of June's astrology. There certainly is a lot going on, but if you pace yourself, you keep the important dates in mind, give yourself and others space when it feels tense, you'll be able to get through this month with flying colors and set yourself up for a forward-moving July. Be safe and be well, and I will see you here soon with your astrological overview, horoscopes, and other astrological videos.